You know how we said for years, we're like, they need to involve technology more in the government so we could help create these policies and
Not
all
like
that.
this.
I'm like, but not like this is not what we meant, right?
You're listening to the Startup Podcast. This is a Reacts episode. Industry insiders having frank debates about the latest tech, politics, and business news. Whether you're a founder, investor, or operator in a startup, you'll gain insights into how current events connect to broader themes and trends that impact your startup, your investments, and your day-to-day operational decisions. The conversation starts now.
Hey, I'm Chris Sard.
I'm Yaniv Bernstein.
I'm Ellie Hansen.
I'm Shira Lazar.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Startup Podcast Reacts. On today's show, we're going to talk about TikTok ban shenanigans. What the heck is going on with this app? What is Trump really doing with TikTok and the relationship with China? And what does it mean for founders betting on Trump's decision-making in tech? Also, we're going to talk about Trump's meme coin. Is it real? Is it a grift? I think you know the answer. And what does it mean for Bitcoin, crypto, and what does it tell us about his mind share and the way he runs the country? And then finally, we're going to do an AI Roundup talking about the launch of O3 Mini and of OpenAI tasks. And what does it tell us about the future of agents and how OpenAI is going to play and how much space is really left for founders to invent new value on top of LLMs. Finally, we're going to touch on Boardy.ai, which raised its own seed round. That's how cool this thing is. We're going to touch on that lightly toward the end as well. All that and much more on today's show. Stay tuned after the break.
Whether you're starting or scaling your company's security program, demonstrating top-notch security practices and establishing trust is more important than ever. Vanta automates compliance with SOC 2, ISO 27001, and more, saving you time and money while helping you build customer trust. Plus, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center, all powered by Vanta AI. And it gets even better. Just for TSP listeners, you can get $1,000 off Vanta when you go to vanta.com/TSP. That's vanta.com/TSP for the Startup Podcast to get $1,000 off. Just before we jump into the show, I wanted to remind you all about the Startup Podcast Pact. This show is free. It takes a lot of work. We have a fantastic team working for us. And the way you can help us keep it free and keep us producing all of these episodes is to make sure that you subscribe to us on YouTube and your favorite listening app. Give us a rating and review wherever you watch or listen to us. And give us a shout out on your favorite social network. That helps us to keep growing the show, helps us find great sponsors, great guests, and keep doing what we're doing.
With that, let's get on with the show. For our first topic, we want to talk about what else the TikTok ban, or TikTok ban shenanigans, really. It's been banned, it's been unbanned, it's been banned again. So just by way of context, way back in the day, seems like a lifetime ago, Trump tried to ban TikTok with an executive order. That was then overturned, I think, by the Supreme Court or something. They've then tried to pass it through the law. It wasn't happening. The Democrats and Biden finally passed a law and have gotten it banned. And the ban actually took effect for like 12 hours on Sunday. And then Trump has swooped in and said, no, we don't want to ban TikTok, and has unbanned it. Shira, I know you did a bunch of research on Red Note, which is the place everyone is going to, apparently. But now it's unbanned again. So maybe let's start with you since you're the new face on the show. What do you make of these banning, unbanning shenanigans? Why is this happening? Where is it going to land? And what should we all make of it as operators, founders, and executives in the space?
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm tired. I'm just tired at this point, burnt out on all these social networks and also on the political circus. A lot of creators and people that build their businesses on TikTok who have been very loyal, even fighting in Congress for this platform, I think feel like they were played, right? And I actually posted about this on LinkedIn that everyone right now, let's be clear, we're all pawns in this game. And I got so much crap for saying this from some of these creators who I'm friends with. They said, how dare you? We've taken off work. We know what we're doing. This is a free speech issue. And yet the fact is what happened. In the end, it became an ad for Trump's presidency. And the line between the government and technology and these social platforms continue to be blurred. And I think that's what's happening right now. And it feels just like at this point, a game a bit, and a lot of people who have an upside in it.
I'd agree with that. It definitely seems to be a game. So just to quickly, like to add, Chris, to your timeline there is what happened is, the act of Congress went into effect on January 19th. TikTok actually preempted the ban
Yeah.
by a few hours and went dark in the US. And then a few hours later, Donald Trump, still not sworn in, this all happened on the 19th, apparently said, oh, I'll make an executive order to not ban TikTok, which, by the way, is not legally enforceable. And then TikTok came back on and they had this message, this in-app message, thanking Donald Trump for this. So when you say, Shira, it's a game, it feels like it was all a stitch-up, right? That was orchestrated between TikTok management and the Trump transition team to make him look good. And as you say, that brings TikTok closer to Donald Trump. And so we have this actually very interesting situation where the reason TikTok was originally banned was because of its Chinese ownership and concerns about Chinese control and Chinese political interference. And so the very interesting game they seem to have played is let's open ourselves to US political interference as well as a sort of counterbalance. So now I would argue we have a platform that is open to political influence from two very strong nation state actors. And I don't know who actually gets the final say there.
I was going to add the hypocrisy in all of this is that as we continue talking about national security and the fact that China could have our data and privacy, on the other end of the coin, the US seems to be involved in all these things, all these American companies, that's an issue as well. And so it's like, which is worse? Obviously, our adversaries having access to us, or the fact that even on our own homeland in America, we seem to have adversaries, right? And people doing who knows what with our information and data. So this is getting definitely very messy. And you mentioned Red Note, which is another Chinese-owned app that has been a big lifestyle app for those creators in China. A lot of people are flocking there kind of as an act of resistance, saying like, oh, you're saying we can't be on this app owned by China, but hey, we're going to this app. And it's like TikTok, even though it's not. It's like an Instagram meets Pinterest. And I mean, I think it's cute, it's cool, but even that app is now being called out, even more so, like run by Chinese government. And a lot of people are really scared of logging in there. And I read the privacy policy, or actually I put it through ChatGPT, to be honest. And a lot of flags with that, including just taking a lot of your data, your facial recognition, address book, giving your information to other countries. I mean, very vague policy. Of course, I needed to try it out because I'm somewhat of a journalist and it's kind of the work I do, but it does scare me. I don't think it's really going to replace TikTok. I think, again, that was a very, stunty thing to do, but it just shows how much creators are clamoring. We need something. We're looking for some sort of solution, and every other platform is trying to be that right now. And trying to get creators on board their platforms, including Instagram, with some upfront payments supposedly to creators to get them on Instagram Reels versus TikTok. So it's a circus, as I mentioned.
It's really interesting that you brought that up. I think one of the most interesting sort of social revelations that's come out of this entire saga was actually, of course, TikTok was hoping that the American public, that 130 odd million Americans took to the street and demanded their TikTok back, but they didn't. Their form of protest was going to a different Chinese-owned app. And I just want to be clear that, ultimately, people knew what they were doing. They were downloading an app that didn't even have an English name. You're using the name Red Note, which is just an American version of actually the Little Red Book, which is obviously a nod to, the name given to the book of quotations from Chairman Mao distributed during the Cultural Revolution. So the name is actually and I'm probably going to butcher, pronunciation, but Jiao Hongshu is my understanding. And the fact that people are downloading this app that doesn't even have an English name in the app stores, people know what they're doing. And I thought it was very interesting, seeing some of the content out there on the internet over the weekend, people explicitly protesting and saying, I saw one TikTok of someone saying, I'd rather fly over to China and hand over my social security card and information to Xi himself then go to Meta. And to me, that was like the most interesting and compelling thing, was that actually all these creators and consumers of TikTok would rather go over to another Chinese app than go to Meta. And that was really, really, I think there's a number of reasons towards that. I think the fact that like TikTok obviously is a very Gen Z app, and Gen Z are hell-bent on making sure they're not using technology or platforms that their older generations are using, as well as, other reasons that people are frustrated with Meta. And one of my favorite quotes is, you often meet your destiny on the path you take to avoid it. And I just thought this was the most perfect example of that. It's like originally said by some French philosopher, but more aptly in this context was from Grandmaster Oogway in Kung Fu Panda, which again just like brings this whole thing back together. And I'm like, I think it's pretty interesting to me, the irreverence with which the massive eye roll that the entire American public had, and was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to Meta. I'm going to go and find this other solution to use.
You mentioned the circus. This is a circus, right? Well, I mean, welcome to part 2 of the Trump administration, right? We're going to spend the next 4 years, if we're lucky, who knows after that, living in the circus. And, it's going to go from crazy to worse. For me, what I'm most interested in is what this says about Trump part 2. And is this predictive of the next 4 years in any way? I think if you're really, really generous, and you're part of the MAGA crowd, you could argue, hey, Trump was a genius. What he wanted to do was not actually ban TikTok. He wanted to use a TikTok ban as leverage with China. And the Dems are so fucking stupid, they actually banned it. Whereas Trump was just trying to threaten banning it and using it as some sort of negotiating tactic. And so in scenario 1, Trump is a genius and the Democrats are idiots. And scenario 2 is Trump is, and I use this word a lot with Trump, a capricious, useful idiot, where he just changes his mind and he's changeable. And he just listens to whoever's in the room, whoever's whispering in his ear. And in Trump 1, he was listening to, I don't know who, Bannon or Kushner or something. And he's like, yeah, we should ban that TikTok thing. And now he's probably listening to Elon, who has interests in China, and he has Tesla and X and others, and he wants to protect those interests in China. And so if to the degree that this is indicative of, a window into how Trump thinks and what's happening with Trump part 2, I think what this may say is that Elon has captured his mind right now, and he's playing a different game with China than he was playing in part 1 until he decides he doesn't like Elon anymore.
Yes, I'm not sure how strategic he is. I do think he listens and reacts. He's very reactive. I think what we're seeing is chaos, right? Even if it leads to some sort of results. I think that it is going to be leverage. I mean, already the Chinese ministry has said that they will now allow companies to make a decision on their acquisitions, which they totally pivoted on. And now we're hearing about the tariffs. Now the big tariff conversation is also intertwined in this, that if they could make a deal, then, the tariff situation might not be as bad. So this is definitely being used as leverage. And I guess you could say it's smart. I have a hard time bringing in the smart thing.
Ascribing intent to anything Trump does.
Because of the ethics and morals behind some of his other decisions and what it's doing for other individuals in this country and beyond. So whatever it is, it might be strategic, but I do still think it breeds chaos. And I'm wondering if what's the ends justify the means?
No. I'm not saying the ends justify the means. I'm trying to read the tea leaves. But I think if there's one consistent thing you can rely on Donald Trump to do is to treat everything like a power struggle where he has to come out on top. So if the Dems are banning it, well, we want to unban it.
He's the contrarian. He's like the person you want on your podcast. He's the ultimate contrarian. Did you see the movie, The Apprentice? It's about his early days.
No, it's on my watch list.
It's actually pretty good, but it does talk about, and I don't know how real this is, but I don't, I'm pretty sure it's real. Like just, his approach to life, which is like, you always win. You never say that you made a mistake or you're wrong, and you keep going, keep fighting, right? You could see this as a recurring theme with everything he does.
My interpretation is, last week we were talking about all of the tech CEOs, especially Zuckerberg, Bezos, and so on, kind of kissing the ring and feeling that the best analogy to the second Trump presidency is like a mafia don or something. And I feel like what was engineered with TikTok gave them an opportunity to kiss the ring. I think the bit that disturbed me the most about the whole thing was the way they personally thanked Donald Trump in their message for going back online, right? So it's like
Yeah.
now they have
Yeah.
taken the knee. They've said, Donald Trump, you are our godfather. Now he's going to let them do what they want because they have publicly gotten behind him. That's the sort of transaction that he really likes.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's as if the CEO of TikTok was handed a script this weekend and he executed it perfectly.
I don't think there's an as if. I think he was.
Bringing this back to tech, because I am nothing close to a political reporter, and I think it's really important to actually highlight the fact that these things are completely intertwined today is quite new and something that founders are having to navigate for the first time, which is just how deeply intertwined technology and politics are. They've always been intertwined, but now we're in a new era of it would seem. And that's because tech has grown up. Tech has grown up and is obviously big business now and is playing around the table from a political standpoint. And what's really interesting is how these technology companies that really affect not only the lives of millions of Americans and billions of people around the world, but their incomes and their livelihoods as creators are now being used as geopolitical negotiating tools, and understanding what that leverage looks like and who's using it in different ways is pretty important. And I think it's something that we can use to better understand, I guess, how we can build technology tools for the future that maybe don't have that position. I don't know.
This is so interesting what you shared about the ignorance of Gen Z and how quickly they'll go to.
Well, I don't know if I said Gen Z was ignorant. Gen Z, don't come after me.
I'm saying, well, we're all, by the way, it's not ignorant, but it's a bit naive. People that live in these places, they look at America, even though they're laughing at us, they're also like, you're lucky you live there because you don't want to live here. You actually want to know what government control is. Come over here, right? But it's this idea that the grass is greener when it's not really, but we don't know how good we have it. So there is a bit of a lack of something there, a disconnect there. But there's also a bit of rebellion, American rebellion happening right now. And also the feeling of wanting a desire for and care for global culture, right? That we're seeing, which is, I think, part of it, the nuances of this. The other thing about tech becoming more political, I think that, tech influences different countries' economies so much more in the past, 20 years, 30 years than it's ever before. And every country is trying to be the number one in tech, right? In innovation, in AI right now. So that's one thing is how does that happen? And then also, how do we use these tools to help us communicate our campaigns and our goals and all that? And we've seen that manipulated, obviously, over the past few presidential campaigns. And we've seen the results of all of this. But yeah, I think we're dealing with a really interesting time, which is why decentralized platforms are being promoted and pushed, like Blue Sky and all that. And that will be interesting to see if that actually has legs beyond our tech bubble, right? And the journalism media bubble.
So let me make a connection and then also attempt a segue to our next topic. The weird thing about this Red Note thing is that it actually reminds me of GameStop and Wall Street bets. And what I mean by that is there's this way of turning everything into a meme, like politics and, life as memetics rather than as, like you say, Shira, different systems of government are really different. And I think people often do forget how good we have things, but the act of rebellion as something that needs to sort of be amusing and funny and a meme rather than, something that's a rational response. It really reminds me of that because in no world does moving to Red Note actually make sense other than something that's kind of ironic and funny.
On that, did you see the meme? This is one of my favorite TikTok memes of all time. I think at the very close of TikTok, and everyone going around saying, to my Chinese spy, thank you so much for watching over me for the last few years. It's been wonderful knowing that you were there. And then the people over in China responding and saying, dear American, it's been lovely watching you for the last 4 years. You should really go out and call your mother. That complete irreverence with which we responded was actually like really funny.
But it's weirdly nihilistic, right? It's like saying nothing really matters other than making a good joke.
There's two phrases that you guys have brought up that I want to just unpack a little bit. One is, Ellie, I think you said tech has grown up and become more political. And the other was, I think it's been mentioned a couple of times, we don't know how good we have it or we have it better than everyone else. Tech has grown up and by definition, therefore, more exposed to the buffeting winds of politics. But what's happening right now with the Trump administration is something materially different. Tech hasn't grown up, it's been co-opted. They have bent the knee, they have kissed the ring, they are sitting where governors usually sit on the dais. They have capitulated completely. And with Zuckerberg canceling DEI programs and moderation programs and all this sort of stuff, it is actually quite breathtaking how quickly the media, tech companies, and what have you have completely capitulated to Trump's power in this cycle. And that's a really important distinction between growing up and capitulation.
I just think that to be clear, I think that the industry growing up, I mean that the size and the power of the industry has grown so significantly that it is a massive bargaining chip. It's a negotiation tool at the table internally within American politics and globally in geopolitical politics. And there's no doubt about it. And those men around that table, and it is vastly men, unfortunately, are now at the helm of that. And, those actions don't look like titans of industry to me. They look more like water boys of the patriarchy. At the end of the day, they understand who is going to be responding to their needs. And if they're servicing shareholders, which, they are, the conflict of interest is vast.
Yeah.
Yeah, they look like scared little boys and
Like frat bros of the White House.
Yeah, that's right. At best, for quote unquote their masculinity or their image, at best they're oligarchs. At worst, they're co-opted, scared little boys.
Yeah.
Very quickly, this other thing before we switch to the next topic. This phrase of how good we have it, we don't know how good we have it, or we're still better than everyone else. This is very dangerous because, over the next 4 years and beyond, we're going to continue to say, well, at least we have.
And then the goalpost keeps moving. This is like a toxic, abusive relationship. We're like, but at least they give us food.
Right.
At least we have some
Right,
water.
exactly. It's a very low bar. United States used to be the shining city on the hill.
Don't worry, we've entered our new golden era. Didn't you hear?
I didn't hear that, no.
Oh, yes. No, we've entered the new era of America. It's we're all basking in the sunlight.
It's fake
of
gold. It's
glory
like
now.
fake gold that gives you a rash, right?
So now we can pivot.
Wait, I was going to say one thing. You know how we said for years, we're like, they need to involve technology more in the government so we could help create these policies and
Not like
I
this.
don't like, but not like this is not what we meant, right? I just remember a few years ago, Mark Zuckerberg so scared being grilled by Congress. Remember those videos and all that?
Mm-hmm.
And how much things have changed, right? This separation between government and then the understanding of these platforms and these executives just being like, could barely answer these questions. They learned from that and prepared. And then also the new administration, it's like the new guard came in and knew that. And together they kind of were like, we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again.
But we could have seen this coming because this is the problem with the kleptocracy. It's that, or an autocracy is that in this particular situation, it's in shareholders' interest to show up.
Yeah.
And to show up to inauguration
Of
and
course.
either slowly or all at once bend the knee. That is the problem with these alignment of interests. And we can see that coming with someone like Trump. And, I think Biden's outgoing speech, it was one of his most prescient speeches when he said, he had this warning of aggression and concentration of power around an industry. This is not a surprise. And it was very telling to me that Trump lined up his tech billionaires on the side of his inauguration like his China dolls on the bench.
In Trump 1, we were the resistance. In Trump 2, he's brought them to heel. It's shocking.
Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Dovetail, Flow Health, and Quora all use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. Why aren't you? Get $1,000 off Vanta when you go to vanta.com/TSP. That's VANTA.com/TSP for the Startup Podcast to get $1,000 off.
Now, speaking about fake gold, speaking about memification of everything, we've got to spend just a few minutes on Trump's coin, his shit coin, his meme coin, dollar Trump, and they also launched Melania. That thing skyrocketed, and I think now is petering out as you would expect. Look, I just have one thing to say about this, and let's then go around the horn. If you need more evidence that this guy is the grifter in chief, that everything he does is self-serving and full of shit, look no further than Trump coin. I mean, if you don't get it, you're either a moron or you're just pretending and you want a piece of the action. This really is the two things that are going on. And so, yeah, that's happening. And he's launched his own shitcoin and he's made billions and billions of dollars of paper gains on this. I don't know if he sold it yet.
Yeah,
but,
it's dipped. It's
crazy
already
town.
crashed.
Yeah, but I don't know if he exited. I don't know
He
if he
can't have
exited.
sold it yet. They have a minimum, but it was worth saying that a Trump-held company bought about 80% of the coin and did make material gains on every single transaction. I was actually struggling. I was trying to do some research ahead of this to see exactly how much material gains were made on that. But, it is pretty telling when he launches a coin, quote, for the people, and ultimately is making just bank off the backs of those people that are supposedly his fans. But it's very clear to us, I suppose, but it is not. It doesn't seem to be very clear to everyone around. What is interesting is the regulation that's seemingly coming out of this, and that we're going straight into a response that cryptocurrency is going to be regulated, and we are going to enter into that era, which I think is very exciting. I'm really, really excited to see cryptocurrency get to enter a more mainstream environment where we can understand and start to, to finally, hopefully, step away from the gambling era of Bitcoin and meme coins. I think are always going to exist, and people want to, unfortunately, ride that wave or not, depending on whether they got into it or not. But at least it seems like it has triggered some conversation around regulation.
You think the meme coin has triggered conversation about regulation?
Well, it was already happening, but I think it's now put it more in the light when, you have the Dogecoin conversations and the meme coin, and everyone's making money. Like, oh, yes, I'm here. I'm launching this for all of us so we can all make money together. Right? When we know what it's really about. I mean, I feel like at least if they both were like, okay, we're putting aside 50% of the money we make will be going to California fires or education in America or something like that. I'd be like, great, launch your shitcoin.
To answer your question, Chris, the U.S. SEC unveiled a new task force today to start work on crypto regulations. So I don't know if the meme coin triggered that in particular. I highly doubt it. That's not necessarily what I meant. But what I did mean is that just the more engagement we have with this in the mainstream media, obviously it's coming to light. And the SEC has Tuesday's move by, I think it was Republican commissioner and the SEC chair, marked the first policy move.
I was going to say that the first things would be an investigation into Melania and Trump's meme coin. They're not going to do that.
Right.
No, they're not going to do that. But they are looking at how to qualify it as a security, which is pretty important.
Yeah.
Well, that would actually stop this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point that I was trying to get to, which is just that, the industry's been calling for it for years, and for the SEC to create clear cryptocurrency rules.
I agree on that.
If you're a serious crypto person who cares deeply about this, you should be disgusted by what Trump's done. It undermines your case for a serious and legitimate alternative financial system. I'm surprised actually it didn't dampen Bitcoin to some degree. It makes the whole thing look like a fucking joke.
Yeah, there's nothing more to say. I mean, him and the Hawk Squad girl, hand in hand.
Ultimately, look, there's obviously cryptocurrency has incredible value and incredible inherent possibilities as a technology, as a foundational technology of what it could do and what we can build on. I think that these types of meme coins and shit coins are absolutely not indicative of that potential. And that's what is so upsetting about it. I'm hoping that with clearer regulation, the potential value of the foundational technology is going to be easier harnessed into future businesses and companies that can start to overshadow and take, the spotlight away from these meme coins and the volatility, and really bring the rest of the public to understand the potential of this inherent technology and not just the gambling side of these shitcoins or meme coins.
Also, does it worry you that president has his own token, like his own currency?
Of course it worries.
To me, this is like, I was talking about the sort of the mafia presidency, the Godfather presidency. What Trump does routinely, and I think this is like nearly the starkest example of it, is he conflates the presidency with Donald Trump, the person, right? And so it's not like, it's called Trump coin. He didn't even bother calling it USA coin or something, right? So it's like, and then, there are too many pro-crypto people who, again, are putting a positive spin on this, saying, this is the beginning of creating an alternative currency and moving away from fiat. And I'm like, no, it's not, right? Like, this was not done through the auspices of the government. This is not, the US Treasury Department was not involved.
Hang on. You saw actual serious commentators saying that the Trump coin is a serious thing that's an alternative currency?
Well, I don't know whether I would describe them as serious, but all the crypto shills are coming out again on social media and talking about it like that. And again, for anybody who thinks that crypto is a technology that has serious potential, and for the record, I'm not sure that I am one of those people, but I'm willing to entertain the argument. For anybody who is trying to make that argument, this sort of stuff undermines it, right? As you say, it does not strengthen it. It is showing that crypto is yet again, its main application is for grift, pump and dump, and, no genuine utility for anybody.
Chris, crypto bros love Trump.
It's because they can get rich off it, right? Not because they can provide like valuable utility.
There are lots of crypto bros and others who also don't love Trump. I think that this is something like, just because that's the loudest voice around the table doesn't mean it's the only one.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sure the percentages. But yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Although it's easy to make fun of. Come on.
Look, I think there's a lot of agendas around the table that it's all confused and conflated and just wrapped around the axle. I think there are crypto bros who love meme coins because they can just pump and dump and participate in that nonsense. I think there are people who are serious crypto, or let's say Bitcoin people, who love the idea of real regulations and a crypto strategic fund and so on, and treating it like a first class alternative financial system. But the thing is that anyone who's serious and thoughtful and who believes Trump is on their side has just been grifted. He may, in fact, stumble over his appendage and do something good for Bitcoin because he's weakened the US government, the US dollar, the US institutions, and passed some laws that the crypto bros like. And it may end up helping Bitcoin very, very well. But supporting Trump because he's going to support Bitcoin is it's sort of like missing the forest from the trees. Let's trade democracy and institutions and rule of law for a short-term gain in our favorite technology play. In any case, the one last point on this is there was rumors he was going to mention a strategic Bitcoin reserve during his inauguration speech, and Bitcoin spiked in anticipation of that, and he did not end up mentioning that. So I think that's also an interesting data point as well. I don't know what it means, much of anything, but that's something that
he was too busy taking us out of the World Health Organization, to do that. Yeah, well, let's also be clear about like the persona of like someone who's a pro-crypto person and someone who'd want to vote for Trump, like disruptor, lack of trust in government, wanting to build independently, like creating a new world, like all these kind of narratives. Not to say like I don't know the percentage of how many crypto people voted for Trump. There's that alignment too that's continued to, I think, push a lot of these folks. And, if you look at like the whole X community is very much, crypto community is part of that, where they've leaned with Elon Musk and everything. So I feel like there's a lot of intersections and overlaps, but maybe just me.
It's all very confused.
What does it mean for founders, though? That's the question.
Not much of anything, I think.
Well, more money in the system, more like cash in the system. I mean, I would say I am not in support of this administration, but there's a feeling, even perception of the economy is doing better. And for me as a small business, I feel post-election that at least conversations are moving forward, whether it be with big brands, companies, partnerships, and all that.
Yeah, so exuberance is back in the system, rightly or wrongly. Everyone is back on risk on. and people are starting to feel a little bit more liberal with their spending and capital allocation. To me, it seems a little bit bizarre because it's risk on in the sense that people are investing on more speculative things, but it's also risk on in the sense that the administration of the United States is highly risky, and it seems like a time to maybe be sitting in cash. But yeah, I think a pro-growth agenda, less regulation, clarity on regulation for Bitcoin and crypto, hands-off approach to technology and innovation. Means that capital allocators are going to capital allocate, and that's good for founders who are raising capital. So we'll see how far that runs.
Let's move on to the next topic. So I think we're just going to do a bit of an AI roundup because, as with every week at the moment, there's lots of news in AI. And so there isn't a single thing that kind of stood out, but a number of really interesting developments. So the first one is that OpenAI is coming close to finalizing the O3 mini reasoning model. It's planning to launch it soon. We actually talked about O3 last week, Chris, which is the latest reasoning model that actually effectively beats the ARC AGI benchmark, which was specifically designed to be difficult for LLMs and therefore kind of show that artificial general intelligence is coming. So that was sort of announced over the holiday break, but not released. So the fact that a lightweight version of O3 is coming to us soon, I think marks another step closer to what more and more people are feeling is true artificial general intelligence. What are people's thoughts on this one?
Genuinely surprised that it's coming so fast. When they first announced it and showed the benchmarks, I thought, well, this will be 3, 4, 5, 6 months of safety testing and whatever. Admittedly, they're releasing the mini version, which is essentially equivalent to O1 proper in terms of capabilities. So maybe it's just like a cheaper version of O1 capability in the wild. So that makes a certain amount of sense, but it makes me wonder how far behind O3 proper is, where we get some of that real, like what I would call pseudo AGI goodness. Very excited about that. And they seem to be moving real fast.
Yeah, they seem to be trying to get ahead of all the other companies right now, right? By the way, you know who we didn't talk about being at the inauguration? Sam Altman. He was there.
Ooh.
He was there, apparently.
He was there in the lineup of tech billion.
No, but I feel like he was cut off. Like no one really, because he's like the new money, maybe. I don't know.
He wasn't on the dais. He wasn't
Yeah,
in that.
he wasn't in that. Anyway,
cluster,
we're not going back. We're not backtracking. But I think what's interesting is the announcement of, you didn't get to this, the assistants. What's it called? They're calling it AI agents, but they called it something specific. It was their...
You're talking about OpenAI's tasks.
I think that's interesting, because I feel like 2025, everyone's talking about the year of the AI agents, the assistants, and how that's going to work. And mainstreaming it, what that will look like.
Sam Altman has said that he believes that AGI level task assistants and AI agents are going to be upon us this year. So that is pretty interesting and exciting. Well, I think it's potentially exciting. I think many people have different feelings about it. Oracle recently rolled out AI agents for sales professionals. So that's internally within Oracle, but that does mean that we are starting to see agents take on full end-to-end tasks for sales professionals internally in the organization. And obviously, if they're doing that, then that's going to be moving externally to a consumer-facing soon. So we are seeing it from multiple different companies, although Sam Altman has explicitly said that that's coming down the pipeline pretty soon.
Let's unpack this a little bit because I don't know if everybody's caught up. So there's LLMs or AI assistants or chatbots. These are typically like one-shots, right? You ask it something, you prompt it, and it responds immediately. Then there's agents, and these terms start to get conflated and confused, and they mean very different things. There are agents, which are powered presumably by LLMs, by large language models. But the difference between an AI assistant and an agent is that you should be able to give an agent a task, and it's a long-lived process. It can go off and do multiple things for you, and maybe even come back and ask you for some follow-up questions, and then continue to work on your behalf behind the scenes. And the interesting thing about what OpenAI announced with tasks, if you're a product manager who's gone through the school of Uber and Google and Facebook and so on, you know how product management works, right? And what you want to do is you want to release thin slices on your way to somewhere. And it's very, very clear that OpenAI tasks, ChatGPT tasks, is a thin slice on the way to first-class agents. It's the scaffolding by which you can ask ChatGPT to register a long-lived process and execute it over time and then manage that process and pause it or otherwise interrogate it. And so while it is not agents, you can see very clearly how it's the scaffolding on the journey towards OpenAI agents. And that's very, very exciting. And yeah, I think it's clear that's something we're going to see over the next unfold over the next 12 months.
I think for founders, this is great. I mean, I know we're all scared of these things and there's the skepticism from the consumer facing side. For me, my productivity has just been increased so much. My ability to pitch, my ability to do things, not even to hire people. For me, I'm a high level person. I have high level ideas, and then putting it into like a report or a deck is just a lot for me. And the fact that I can now just put my high level ideas into ChatGPT, like I use it for so much. So I think for small business and founders, it's a game changer and it's so helpful. And I'm hoping people see more of that versus continue this fear mongering conversation.
Absolutely. And actually, maybe I'll bring in a conversation around Boardy.ai, because that was another thing we wanted to discuss. And I think that ties in very much to what you are talking about, which is that this was a startup that is an AI superconnector. It actually recently had some controversy, but it raised its own seed round, meaning the AI technology, which is, basically about contacting people both by email and by phone. I actually tried it out. It's kind of cool. It did all of the initial connections, introductions, pitching to investors. And only, once they kind of got them pretty excited, did they connect them to the actual founders. And so, of course, I'm sure there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors, a little bit of hype around this, but, the investors confirmed that they did all of their initial discussions with the AI tool itself. And so, I definitely, for me, this is, as well as being a fun story, it is a kind of a milestone where we're saying, okay, Chris and I have been discussing for the last few months with our various guests is like, is AI ready for prime time? Like, is it at a stage where it can fulfill its potential, or are we sitting in the uncanny valley where it's not quite useful in a lot of applications? And I think this is an example of where it really is replacing humans in applications. And it's an exciting time for founders because, that it's becoming a bit of a tired cliche, but it's true. This is the worst AI will ever be. It just keeps getting better. And when we return to our news roundup, we'll see every week how much new stuff is happening. It is getting better. It is getting cheaper. And if you as a founder are not leaning in and figuring out how you can use it, how you can leverage it, both for your personal productivity, but also in your product, then you're really missing a trick.
Or building around it.
Yeah, but this is also the one of the more important takeaways from this is not just productivity and so on, but there's a lot of AI companies out here in the Valley who are building agent scaffolding and building tooling on top of OpenAI. And like every one of these announcements should give you pause as one of these founders go like, there's no room left for me to play here. They are going to build their own agents. If you're building in like an agent development platform or something, like you're wasting your time. OpenAI is going to be the agent platform. It's going to be the agent and Copilot and Gemini and whatever. You need to think about a world where these 4 or 5 frontier models with these 4 or 5 frontier companies, they own a huge fat layer of reasoning and labor, intellectual labor and physical labor. Where do you exist in that playing field? That's the takeaway from me. The world is massively disrupted.
Yeah. We as in VC see tons of what's called AI wrapper companies. And I think for a long time, there was sort of this belief that, well, an AI wrapper is like, there's no fundamental proprietary IP. And so it's not, it wasn't like a venture investable business. But actually, I think that, the amount of work to be done in terms of applying these companies and this technology into different industries, and especially legacy industries, there's so much room for innovation. And those 4 or 5 fundamental, large players that are going to own the sort of infrastructure underneath it should own the infrastructure underneath it. And I think that's one of the hardest things for founders to really figure out is sort of where does that end and their work begin? And that's still to be determined. But, Boardy is a fantastic example of it. A few months ago, the last time I was on the show with you guys, we talked about modalities and we talked about the way AI is delivered. And I think why Boardy hit such a memification and such a note is because it was delivered via voice. And we're not quite there with voice yet. Like you can't We haven't quite crossed that uncanny valley, but I think it's coming this year. I really do. I think that that's going to happen sooner than we realize. And up until this point, whilst we've all been blown away by the capabilities, we've still been really interacting with AI largely in a chat-based modality and user experience. And that's something that we're all very familiar with. But voice and conversation as this entire new frontier for innovation and technology for founders to harness this and say, well, how does this look as a user interface? How does voice look and feel as a user interface in my business? Or am I building an entire new business around voice as a user interface in an industry that needs that disruption? There's just multitudes of space in the playing field.
Here's a contrarian take for you. I actually think one of the best investments in AI is AI wrappers. They sit lightly on top of the LLM and inherit all of its value as it is growing and expanding. And so it's, when you think of most of these chatbots, there are these kind of unstructured prompts and you've got to have some imagination and stick it in there and try to hope that you can bend it to your will. Wrapping that with structured inputs and structured outputs and structured guided journeys and leveraging the LLM without being too clever about plugging holes and building scaffolding, I think is actually exactly where you want to be. And Sam Altman has said this many times, you want to bet that the LLM is going to get really, really good. And how do you do that? By building a lightweight wrapper over the top and riding the wave.
Isn't it like an app on the App Store? Like Apple was the App Store. But then the worry, and I wonder if you're seeing this, would the worry be that if I built my business on OpenAI, that they could, if they see the opportunity, they could just build that too, right, and do it better?
Yeah, but the opportunity is, firstly, I think that the model will generate a lot of applications on the fly for you anyway. But the opportunity is to say, they're the generalized platform that will build all the generalized tools, communications and collaboration, documents, and so on. So then what are the industry specific applications, which again, might just be very thin wrappers, like best of breed data collection, prompting, journeying, visualization. And you just like ask the LLM for all the data, right? And all the reasoning. ChatGPT is not going to go build some construction estimation software in terms of guiding you through that process. Now, if you're very good at prompting and you say, I need you to help me go on a construction estimation journey, it will do that. But most people are too lazy and uncreative to ask that prompt that in the right way.
Yeah.
And so the software will help you.
And if I wasn't clear, I think that's what's so interesting is that at the beginning of this recent chapter, I would say maybe a year ago, broadly, that was the take is that, oh, it's an AI wrapper. It's not unique. There's no IP. But actually, I think that I completely agree with you, Chris, in that I think that there's immense opportunity if founders can identify a niche and really build and own that niche, especially in legacy industries.
Yeah.
Who was it that said, was it Amir on this show that said, I might be misquoting this, but AWS is just an NVIDIA wrapper and Netflix is just an AWS wrapper. And it's like they're all wrappers.
They're all built on each other. Yeah, absolutely. They're all intrinsically built on each other. I think one thing to bring it back to Boardy, to hearing that Boardy raised its own seed round, yes, a little bit of smoke and mirrors, but I did read the original post from the founder on LinkedIn, describing this experience. And the way that he said it was that when investors met Boardy on the Friday, introduced Boardy to their partners on the weekend, and by Monday had done the investment, I just thought, man, that is the ultimate example of FOMO investing if I've ever heard it. And that's something that was just made me shake in my boots a little bit. I think that, frankly, is probably a little bit of storytelling and getting excited. But the fact that an AI capability is starting to get to this agent level where it can go out and actually execute tasks entirely, raise around, do multiple different sequential tasks is pretty exciting and pretty interesting.
Just wait until the next startup, its agent is negotiating with the VC.
Well, that's the thing is they're going to get smart. I mean, don't you think there's going to be a bit of the backlash of like, I don't want it. It'll feel spammy. Like, another AI reaching out to me.
Oh, absolutely. I already get that. We already received that inbound.
But what I'm saying is Ellie, as a VC, is going to launch her Ellie bot VC, right? And the spammy AIs are going to be contacting the spam receptor.
And then you're going to meet someone in person and they'll be like, I messaged you. I have no idea who you are. Like, no one's going to know each other or have any sort of sense of any conversations happening.
Let me put a more positive spin on it, because I think Chris is right. Like, Ellie's going to create an Ellie bot to deal with all the other bots reaching out. And quite a while ago on this show, I made the prediction that when AIs communicate with each other, the protocol language that they're going to use for that is English, right? So what we're going to have is bots talking to other bots. And, sometimes that's stupid. Like on social media, when you've got bots arguing with other bots, that's just a waste of everyone's time and energy. But if you effectively have protocol bots who are negotiating as agents of different parties to reach good accommodations. And that's just an incredible automation, right? Ellie bot knows what Ellie wants to invest in, and the startup founder fundraising bots know how to pitch, and they'll talk to each other and save all the time. And eventually Ellie will just get, a nicely wrapped up, deal memo or whatever and decide whether to invest or not. It seems to me like a great
Oh my
outcome.
gosh.
Life on autopilot.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that, Yana. I think one of the most interesting things about that is that what you're saying is that people have to be very clear with what they want. And I think that that's part of, to me, one of the hardest things about crossing this chasm of going from tasking, performative tasks where you're asking an AI to do something for you and coming back versus an agent going out and executing sequential tasks and sometimes circling back and then, bringing you a final result. I think that the biggest challenge is the bottleneck's the human, because the human doesn't know what the human wants. And right now, our way of figuring out what we want is going through that process and exploring and creative thinking. And to know exactly what you want when you go in and prompt it that's why there are an entire creative class of AI creatives and designers that are brilliant with this technology, because they've learned how to prompt it. They've learned how to ask and how to know what it wants. And I think ultimately, if you don't know what you want, you can't get what you don't know what your interests are. And if you're talking about, let's say, AI bots negotiating with each other, to go into a negotiation, you need to know what your interests are. You need to know what you really want. You need to know what your best alternative to a negotiated agreement is. You need to know what your worst alternative to a negotiated agreement is. Very rarely do people go into a negotiation knowing those things clearly. The act of negotiating usually brings those to light. And so I think one of the most interesting challenges with AI when we get to that point is that people aren't going to know what to ask it, and therefore, or they're going to ask it something that they think they want, and then they're going to get not an outcome that they actually want, but it's not the AI's fault. It's actually the human's fault for not knowing what the end
Or
point
the AI
is.
could also mentor the human, saying, in order to get in this conversation, this is what I need to know. And you're like, oh, I didn't know. All right, thanks for letting me know. I'm going to start thinking about this to give you the information. So it becomes like a bit of an education support system. I mean, my issue, and then we probably need to wrap up, but my issue with some of these press-worthy AI companies, like they get all this buzz, and then you actually try them, and no offense, they do not work and suck. Like in application at scale, like,
Hey, Boardy introduced me to an awesome founder this weekend.
is that true?
To be fair, I haven't met the founder yet, but Boardy did introduce me to a founder.
Potentially awesome.
Potentially.
I have someone, Don Allen, who I would suggest you follow. He's amazing. Is a creative graphic artist, works with all these AI tools, and I trust him with a lot of that. I was saying how my big issue is editing, right? Like, how do I have so much content that I capture. I know I use Opus to edit down, but having a bunch of videos and having someone, like right now, I give it to my editor saying, I want this vibe, put this thing, blah, blah, blah. I just give it her prompts, you could say. And she gives me a result, an edit, a final edit. And he goes, oh, use this company Eddy.ai. Oh, this is it. This is your solution. It was kind of, but it wasn't, again, ready for prime time. The edit that it gave me was horrible. And you could say, okay, I could put in better prompts and all that. I'm going to play around with it. It's there. It'll get there. But it's still, some of these tools are just not ready, but yet they're being boasted about as the top tools for creators. And I'm worried that people like me will play around, but like the masses that don't have the time or the patience to really play around will throw it by the wayside. And then there goes their like consumer adoption.
They will, but that's okay, because that's why there are creative people, and there are, there's different pit levels of competence at things. Just a couple of things before we wrap up quickly. Ali, you mentioned it's going to come down to your intent and your clarity of your goals. I think, like, doesn't so much of life come down to that, right? Like, just figuring out what you want and asking the right
Yeah.
questions. And so AI sort of magnifies that. But just one quick hot take that I heard this week, I think bears mentioning, and then we can wrap up. I heard Mark Zuckerberg, amongst all the stupid shit that he said on Joe Rogan, he said one thing that I thought was interesting. He said people seem to conflate reasoning with will and with consciousness. And he's saying those are three separate things. So they're worried about these AI agents, waking up and taking over the world. He's like, all we've managed to create is some amount of reasoning. They have no will and they have no consciousness. And we're in no danger, he believes, of creating those other two things. So what we have is this kind of raw reasoning capacity without consciousness or will. Now, one might argue, well, it's only a matter of time until this reasoning spontaneously generates will and consciousness. I don't know. But I thought that was a deconflation and a separation of concerns that I'd never heard before. And I thought was really, really interesting and insightful. He also, of course, said stupid shit about masculinity and whatever, but we will leave that by the wayside. All right, guys, so great to have you on the show. Thank you so much, Shira, for joining us on your first episode. Hopefully many more to come.
Thank you.
Ellie is a returning champion. Shira, how can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, at Shira Lazar everywhere. And I have a newsletter called The Alpha. Check it out.
And also soon launching a Shira bot, right? That's going to come.
I mean, I could use it. I would like to do less work. So if you have a good one, let me know.
Ellie, how can we get in contact with your Ellie bot and various places on the internet?
You can find me on LinkedIn, not a bot yet, very happily, just me, at Ellie Hansen on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And Yanev?
Yep, I'm mostly on LinkedIn, trying to make it a little bit less boring. Love connection requests from TSP listeners, so you can find me there for my hot takes. And how about you, Chris?
I'm on all the social media at Chris Sard or on my site, chrissard.com and chrissard.com/newsletter. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll catch you all in the next one.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Today's episode of the Startup Podcast was brought to you by Vanta. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, and more, saving you time and money while helping you build customer trust. Plus, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center, all powered by Vanta AI. Over 7,000 global companies already use Vanta. Why don't you? Get $1,000 off Vanta when you go to vanta.com/TSP. That's VANTA.com/TSP for the Startup Podcast to get $1,000 off.
You're talking about OpenAI's tasks.
Tasks. Oh, so tasks.
Tasks.
Um,
Tasks.